Moses Itauma, he did seem quite grounded on this situation. He did mention this guy's name, obviously, because that's what the crowd were chanting. That's what everyone was talking. That's what everyone was mentioning. And that, of course, was Oleksandr Usyk. And a lot of people, I think Turkey's even insinuated that he'd like to see a Itauma in there with Oleksandr Usyk next. And my immediate thoughts on that are no. Listen, Itauma is tremendously talented. He's tremendously talented. He's got so much talent, you think it would be unfair. All right? He's just phenomenal. He really is, right? I believe that you can push him a little bit further. And I think he's ready for top 15, maybe even the top 10 of the heavyweight division now. Yeah, I do. But there's no point sticking him in there with Oleksandr Usyk now off the back of that performance over Dylan White, because they're both up there in their 30s. In fact, Oleksandr Usyk is older than Dylan White, but they are just vast in terms of what's left in the tank and just ability in general. It's not even close. Oleksandr Usyk is one of the most technically sound heavyweights you'll ever see. He still has plenty left in the tank. Of course, he doesn't have as much as he did, say, 4 years ago when he fought Anthony Joshua, certainly not. But he still has bags left in the tank, as you saw in his last performance against Daniel Dubois. As you saw in the rematch against Fury, where I thought he looked really good, actually. I thought he looked really good in that rematch. I really did. I thought he was better in that fight than he was in the first one. I think he's still got plenty left in the tank. He's always in shape, and again, I'm going to say he's probably forgotten more about boxing, definitely, than Itauma has ever been exposed to. So I think, although Itauma would pose different challenges to Oleksandr Usyk, I'm sure Itauma, maybe certainly in the hand speed, maybe even the foot speed department, is probably faster at this point now than Oleksandr Usyk. That would pose some challenges. But at the end of the day, I mean, I wouldn't pick Itauma over Oleksandr Usyk, no way. Certainly not now. Maybe if we were talking about Oleksandr Usyk in 2 years' time, maybe I probably would pick him to beat Oleksandr Usyk then. If there's enough decline and Itauma's progressed, yeah, I probably would. But I couldn't honestly say I'd pick Moses Itauma now over Oleksandr Usyk, nor do I think should he be facing Usyk. Yeah, people will hype it. You'll have people like Ben Davison say, oh, he's the tools to beat. Listen, Ben Davison, I like you. I think you're a fantastic trainer who gets a lot of stick, which is completely unwarranted as far as I'm concerned. But Itauma ain't beating Usyk right now. And Ben Davison, you're the guy who said that Anthony Joshua under you would beat Oleksandr Usyk in a trilogy fight. And I'm not trying to have a go at you, but the advice you gave AJ in that Dubois fight was questionable at best. And you're saying that with you in the corner, he'd beat Oleksandr Usyk? Really? Alright, well, maybe. But there you go. I think with Itauma, we do need to have a look at potential matches in the future. There are 3 potential opponents that I would look at, because you got to bear in mind, he's gone around, and I don't even think he took a clean shot from Dylan White. So essentially, Frank Warren has I'm not saying he will be on it, obviously not, but if he wanted to, Frank has a show on this Saturday night. You could stick Itauma on that card. He's obviously not gonna, but that, you know what I mean, because he's literally had no wear and tear whatsoever in that fight. So he's good to go for the end of the year. I'd even be maybe looking at the undercard potentially of Ben Eubank, or maybe if they want to get him out in Riyadh, November 22nd, or if there's a show on before Christmas. And the 3 opponents, if I had my promoter's hat on, I'd be looking at for Moses Itauma would be, if you wanted, I would say maybe the least risk, right? But you wanted to get him rounds, I would say Jermaine Franklin. And I've been saying that for a while. Jermaine Franklin would give it 10 rounds. He's not a big puncher. He doesn't pose that much of a risk, you would think anyway. But he's durable. He can be a bit awkward. I'd be very surprised if Itauma gets rid of him early. Very surprised. I don't think he would, quite frankly. I think he can hurt him. I think Dylan White hurt Jermaine Franklin on a couple of occasions when they fought. But I'd be very, very surprised if Itauma is getting rid of him early. He might get rid of him late, I wouldn't rule that out, but you'll definitely get some rounds out of Jermaine Franklin, and it'd be a good competitive fight. So I'd like to see that. I would. World title fight next year. Let's focus on development now. So I do Jermaine Franklin. Slightly more dangerous fight. It's a fight that people were mentioning a couple of months ago, and it's gone quiet now, and this guy has kind of gone off the face of the earth now, seemingly. Would be Martin Bacoli. I mean, we heard Turkey mention it, maybe Bacoli for November 22nd, even when this fight was announced with Dylan White. So I would say, yeah, why not? I mean, we've seen a young prospect, and I seen a clip of Tyson Fury, and I wish Tyson Fury would always sound like that. But it was a clip. It's obviously not a recent clip. It's a clip of, I think, maybe last year or thereabouts, warning Jared Anderson and Moses Itauma. Might have been earlier than that. Might have even been 23. But warning them about, don't give in to the nightlife. Don't give in to the temptation. Speaking about how talented both fighters are, and they are both talented. I know Anderson is. I believe he still has something there. And talk about how talented they are, how hard they were to spar. And I look at Anderson and I think, you ran into Bacoli, you weren't ready. Bacoli hasn't looked the same since. He literally, the stars aligned that night, and they haven't aligned since in any way, shape, or form. And I think Itauma, although he's dangerous, Martin Bacoli with that punching power, I don't see him beating Moses Itauma. I don't. I really don't. And I think that fight right there poses risk. But I would like to see Itauma in with a Bacoli. And then finally would be Filip Hrgovic. That fight right there is probably the most risky out of the three. But it would give him, well, he's already got a high ranking with the WBO, but it would stand him in brilliant stead for a crack at a world title, because you're dealing with someone there who's actually technically quite good in Filip Hrgovic. He's not the most defensively sound heavyweight as we saw against David Adelaide. He's easy to hit. He's quite slow. And Adelaide is fast. Moses Itauma is even faster. So that would be a good fight. And I would be intrigued to see how Itauma would, I'll be intrigued to see how Itauma will cope with the relentlessness and the strength. Not really the punching power, because he's not really that type of a puncher, is Filip Hrgovic, but I would love to see how he would cope with just the sheer strength of Filip Hrgovic. That'd be an interesting one. So they would be the three opponents that I would be looking at for Moses Itauma next. Jermaine Franklin, again, I'd say least risk, but still I'd be interested to see that fight. Martin Bacoli, risk, but I think Itauma should come through it. And then Hrgovic, another risk. Itauma should come through it, but very durable, granite chin. I mean, that would be so interesting to see how Itauma would react if he lands that big right hand on Hrgovic. Because Hrgovic's chin is something else, it really is. And I'm telling you now, he wouldn't react. He would not react. Mentally, you have to understand for a fighter, if you're hitting people on the chin and they're going, when you hit someone on the chin and they don't go, you see it with fighters, they're like, oh, crap. Wasn't expecting that. So that really right there, that would be interesting. They would be the three. At the end of the day, it's 2025. He's 20 years old. He'll be 21 come the end of the year, just after Christmas. Let 26 be the year he goes for world titles. Let his last fight this year be a big one, and a fight that will tell us a lot. Because we need questions asked. We need them. We didn't see any of that in the Dylan White fight. None of it. Itauma went in there, blasted him out and around. So we need to see questions being asked. And I think those three guys can ask certain questions. Let me know your thoughts. Now, they're the three I would go for. Let me know yours. Let me know if you agree, disagree, if you would add Joe Parker. Maybe you think he's ready for Usyk. Personally, I don't. I wouldn't put him in with Usyk. I wouldn't put him in with Usyk now or this year, over the next year. I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. And if you're Usyk, you'd want a king's ransom to fight young Moses Itauma. You would. I mean, I think Usyk could win, but, he's very talented. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. And as always,